Welcome to the Mystic Detectives Podcast, where we seek to unlock the wonders of the unknown. Hello, everybody. I'm Andrea Marziano.
And I'm Crystal Miller.
And I'm Erin Spevak.
Great to have everyone here today. Thanks for coming, Erin.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me, you two.
Hey, so I was wondering, did y'all get to see the eclipse the other day?
I did. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Did you go anywhere, Erin, to see it, or did you just look out your window?
Just looked outside.
Door.
I'm up in Park City, so I got a pretty good view.
Oh,
that's awesome. And I'm in Washington, and so the clouds were pretty thick, but Max brought me 2 pairs of sunglasses and a welding glasses, and we're out there going.
Max being her significant other.
And actually, because it wasn't a full coverage, so there was still 10% of the sun available. And the full eclipse is, I believe, next summer or April or something. I can't remember exactly.
February, I think, but I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, we'll look that up, but it was pretty cool. I like it because it's an event that we just can't see every day. And to me, that's one of those mystic things that we look at. And I know there's a lot of people that feel different energies around the moon cycles. Some people, I think, are more sensitive to it than others. Do you feel like that's something that either one of you have? Is any sensitivity to the moon cycles that you've noticed, especially these big events?
Big time.
Yeah, I know that definitely more babies come when there's a full moon.
Yeah, definitely. What do you feel, Erin? I mean, this can bring us into what I call them gifts. What gifts or sort of experiences do you have in the mystic realm? And maybe this is something that falls into that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've been a medium since I was little, and I felt like I've always had a spiritual connection, but I just didn't know because I was used to it. So it wasn't until I was older and somebody said, actually verbalized to me, "Hey, you're a medium." I because it was just the norm for me. But in particular with the changing with the moon cycles, I definitely felt a shift, like almost a release of energy, a weight lifted for me personally, in terms of not carrying around so much guilt, shame, regret, things like that. I felt almost kind of like I had new eyes.
Well, that's awesome. Do you feel like that guilt, shame, regret is something that you carry of your own, or I look at it sometimes as generational. Do you feel like it's all yours, or do you feel like it's coming from elsewhere?
Definitely generational. Definitely generational. I do have those things of my own, but I know that a lot of it's generational as well. But I know that a lot of the healing work that I do on a personal level heals not only me, but my entire line.
Yeah. And I believe that it goes forward and back. That, for example, in my family, we have a history of the breast cancer gene. And I had been positive for it. And I told my kids, it ends with me. It ends with me. You absolutely can clear yourselves of it. This doesn't have to come to your generation. And both of them have been tested, and both of them are negative for the gene. And they both did work on it. Yeah, it's totally cool. So I believe. Yeah, I believe it's a thing. I mean, I had a heart issue where my left atrium had enlarged 70% bigger than it was supposed to be because of some issues. And the doctor said, I don't think it'll ever get to where it was. But I'm a nurse also, and I literally looked at a picture of a heart and a video of a heart doing what it should do, doing it properly, doing it like that. And I looked at it every single day for months. And I visualized it the whole time, that mine would go back to regular function, do the things it gets to do and everything else. And before I moved here to Washington, I went for a final visit with that doctor, and he did a scan, and he said it was completely back to normal. He had no idea that it could happen that way. And he said, I don't know what you did. And I told him, and he said, okay, well, whatever. He sort of poo-pooed it. He's like, okay, whatever, just keep doing it. And so, but it's huge, I think. So how about you, Crystal? Have you had experiences like that, or anything where you felt like you were able to affect generational changes, or did you feel something with the moon?
I've never really thought about it, to be honest with you. I have been pretty focused on just getting my own shit together. Well, and raising my kids, but like trying to help them keep their shit together. So I've never really thought about it. I know that I did a lot of healing with my grandpa Blaine before he died.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I feel like a great connection to him. Whereas when I was a child, I was absolutely afraid of him. Like he was just some big fat drunk guy that lived with my great grandmother.
Well, I remember you talking about being afraid to even go to his house.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just the only reason that we even went was because he lived with his mom. So we'd go to see his mom, and every once in a while he'd come down and see us. But it wasn't very often. But at the end of his life, I saw him every day.
Because he was living on your dad's property, if I remember correctly,
yeah,
right?
He was one of my best buds. So I think that's also generational healing, that just comes through kindness and an openness to letting somebody be themselves. He stopped being a big fat drunk guy.
Awesome. I love stories like this. I just think this is part of what we're here for, is discovering how we experience things. So Erin, what do you describe being a medium? I mean, I have a hard time when somebody says I'm a medium. I'm like, are you sure you're not a large? That goes through my head every time. And I'm sure you've heard that before. And it's ridiculous because it's not even a thing. But for some reason, always it goes through my head. But what do you describe being a medium? What does that look like to you?
It looks like being able to connect and communicate with loved ones or just anybody that's passed on to the other side. I, from a young age, I had a lot of like prominent figures in my life pass away. My mom passed away when I was 6 years old, tragically. That's when I realized I had the connection was after that, because things would happen, like I'd be walking down the hall and one of my earrings would fly out or something. She always did things with like my earrings to me and my family. Like it happened to my aunts too. Like we would just be going around and then your earring would fly out, or she would move things. There was times where I would go into, different settings, like go into a house that maybe had some energy in there when I was younger, and I would feel the fear or something that had happened there. And I would tell my mom, I don't want to be here. I don't like it in here. And, and everybody would be like, what's your deal? Like, we're just visiting friends. And I didn't know what was going on, but it was because I was feeling the energy of whatever had taken place in the space that I was in. But it's hard to, it sounds far-fetched when you just tell people, oh yeah, I can speak to the dead. But I started actually doing it as to help people communicate and also heal grief and loss. That's why I think that I have the gift, is because I was able to use my gift to heal myself from losing people. I was able to communicate and not feel so much loss from the person, passing away. And that's what I use it for now, is I help other people be able to deal with grief and loss when they lose someone. A lot of the times when someone passes away, there's a lot of things left unsaid. There's a lot of things you want to tell that person. Some people also will be in a situation where somebody passes away and they might have said something that they didn't necessarily mean, and not expecting that person to pass. And then there's unfinished business.
Right. So when you do your mediumship, is that a correct word? I'm not sure that's a phrase. Is it a formal sort of setting, or does someone come up to you, or do you walk up to them, or how do you practice this?
How do I practice? Well, I got my start with cards. I started using cards when I first started doing this. Usually I will have something to help me. I can channel, but a lot of the times when I'm trying to differentiate between who I'm speaking to, it's hard to get a clear message. So I like to use something like tarot cards. Just something to put a picture or words to what's trying to come out, and it helps the message come out a lot clearer. Or even we like Mystic Detectives was kind of a way that I got out there, but I've been doing this long before Mystic Detectives. I don't, it's kind of hard for me to say how this all came about, because it was like one day I was normal and then the next day people were calling me and being like, hey, help me talk to my loved ones that have passed on. It kind of just happened. And it's hard for me to say exactly how, because I've been doing it for so long now. I've been doing it for about 10 years now.
Right. You can't say it was the third Wednesday of October, whatever, at 4 p.m. I don't know. Yeah, I get that. I get that, because what you said earlier about it's been part of your life, your whole life, and you didn't know it wasn't what everyone experiences, really resonates with me, because I have a lot of things like that. And I usually channel it when I do Reiki. And
that's how I learned it, was Reiki.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea I had a gift until I was in Reiki classes, and my instructor was like, "You've got a gift. Like, you need to use this." She'd often ask me to give her Reiki treatments because she felt like they were so powerful. And that sounds like a humble brag, but I don't mean it that way.
Right.
But yeah, it was like, and then there came a point when I could do it. I didn't need Reiki to do it. I could just kind of focus in on myself and be able to do it.
Yeah. And I think for me, I do get messages and things like that when I'm not doing Reiki, but people will come to my practice because they know they will often get messages from people who have passed on. And it's interesting because, and I'm sure this probably resonates with both of you, that when I hear a message, I know when it's for me or when it's for someone else, even if it's not in a formal sort of setting. It's like, yeah, that message is clearly not for me. And I really get, especially if it's just random. I don't know if this has happened to either of you before, but if it's just random and I get this message and I may be sitting here alone in my office or whatever, and all of a sudden I hear something, and even when no one's there, I feel like I need to be aware of who I run into, because it may be something that someone gets to hear later on. Right. So yeah, that's interesting. And so do you still use cards, Erin?
I do. What if on request, if people want them, sometimes I'll pull just for myself in case I'm confused, because for example, like we went into, during one of the episodes of Mystic Detectives, we went into this guy's house, and there was a lot of things that had happened in there. Like, I'm talking like probably like 18 dead young girls trying to talk to us all at the same time.
Oh boy.
And so we were having a hard time interpreting what they were trying to tell us. So I pulled out the cards just so I could get, a good, a clear story on what they were trying to tell us. And they ended up telling us, their story, that they were killed there and that they were essentially trapped there for a while, and that they had been like bought and sold and all this crazy stuff.
No.
But afterward, after we kind of got the story out and we were able to put into words what they were trying to tell us, it was almost like a weight was lifted, like that. Like,
their message was
they just wanted their story told. They just wanted somebody to hear what they had been through. That's all they needed to move on to the next phase.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the things that brings to mind for me anyway is I often, when people, I've taught Reiki, and I've taught people how to learn how to deal with some of these gifts without feeling fear. And I think the power of language is huge. And so people will say, how do you protect yourself? And I say, I don't even use that word, because protection brings, to me at least, in mind, fear. And I'm protecting myself from something scary. And I always say that I do things to make myself feel comfortable, whatever that looks like. And do you have something that you do specifically to keep yourself feeling comfortable?
The thing is that I've felt more uncomfortable in human situations than I have in the spirit realm. I actually feel more comfortable dealing with the spirit realm than I do dealing with people.
I get you. I get you. No, I get you. And
I just wear usually I wear just like protective crystals, like ones that I like a black obsidian. That's usually offers me a psychic protection. But like I feel like that, like you say, that's a mindset. Like
Mhm.
if I'm not in a scary situation and I don't feel, I think it's all intentions. If
Mhm.
you're going in to communicate with these spirits with an intention of helping them and with a good intention, there's nothing to fear. And,
Right.
but it's like if you're going and you're getting yourself into a scary situation, then I guess I would take measures to protect myself. But
Yeah.
I don't really do much except for, maybe some prayer of my own beforehand and a crystal.
Yeah.
Or a
That's
candle.
awesome.
Yeah.
So kind of a random question, but what do you think about these folks that have these hauntings? And I can't remember which ones are. Oh, Amityville. God,
Amityville horror.
Amityville horror.
horror. Yes. So what do you
Yeah.
think about stuff like that, where it is a very fear-inducing situation? I guess what would you say to that?
Let's burn some sage. Let's get it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually have been asked to do clearings before, and I have done them. And I have gone into situations where I felt fear, but I can, like she kind of said, I can usually tell if it's mine or not.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to situations like that, I would tell the people, let's have a look. Let's see how it feels, because if I go in there and I feel something completely horrible, then I'm just going to tell the person, like, you're going to have to find somebody else.
Yeah.
Because
Or maybe clear the space before I come back or something. Mhm.
Yeah, but I haven't had that happen yet. I've come to find that most of these energies just want someone to hear their story.
Mhm.
They a lot of them just never got to actually verbalize what happened, or nobody knows where they are, or their body has been lost somewhere and they still haven't found them. And that's usually how it works in my experience, at least. It's just a spirit wanting their story heard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is how everyone experiences these gifts differently, their own way. And some people will say something like, well, they don't do it like I do, so they must be weird or wrong or faking or whatever. It's interesting to hear people say stuff like that. And I think that is speaking to their discomfort with anything they may be experiencing, not what's really happening around them. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to kind of prove yourself?
Oh, yeah, my whole life. Not a lot of people believe in these things.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've been in situations where I've had people come to me and want my service, but they don't believe what I'm doing. They don't believe
Right.
in it. And it's like, I can usually tell off the bat especially when I'm reading cards for a person. Like, it'll usually just come out in the cards. Like, I'll just straight up tell them, you don't believe what I'm telling you right now. I can tell you don't believe what I'm telling you right now. Why are you here?
Right.
Mhm.
Are you just trying to see if maybe you can find some type of realness within this situation, or if you can find some truth? Because I know you don't believe me.
Yeah. And what do they say? If you've ever called anyone on it, what have they said?
Usually, well, the first person that I had to tell that to tried to tell me different. Tried to tell me, hey, no, I believe you. That's why I called you, And then I started
Sure.
pulling the cards out, and I'm like, well, I don't think you believe me, because this is what I'm getting. I can't get a clear read on you. You're not open. See, a
Right.
person has to be open for me to even be able to, channel for them. And if they're closed off, I can't essentially get what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I've had experiences similar to that. So I don't even know what I called myself or my gift, because psychic feels too cartoony to me.
Psychic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had situations where I've even felt that they don't want to know the truth so hard that they're just like, as tight as a box turtle. Like, there's no getting in there.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I in my experience, what draws them to us and to me is a deep underlying desire to know the truth, but they can't get their conscious past it,
Yeah.
And so they kind of, they go through the motions, but they can't just let you in.
A lot of
Well,
it too, I think, is programming. Like we were kind of talking about earlier, like the generational thing. Like these people want to open up spiritually, but they have something that's programmed from, say, religion or their parents, or just that's passed down from generations, that it's bad or that it's dangerous or that it's evil.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And it's interesting because I was speaking to, we were talking with my daughter at one interview, and I asked her, do you think that these gifts are generational? Like, I mean, since I have it and you do, and your brother does, and my sister, and she said, I do sort of, but I think that everyone has it, she said. And I agree. I agree that everyone has a gift of some sort. And I've even assisted people to find their gift, like I was saying earlier, because some people have had such dark feeling experiences that they shut it off. And so to be able to show them how to feel comfortable and how to open themselves and how to invite only beings of light and things like that make a huge difference. So Erin, do you feel like you're an expert in this area, or what would you, if you said to somebody, hi, I am me and I do this and this is why, sort of thing, would you consider yourself an expert?
I would consider myself an expert as a numerologist and an astrologer, yes, because I've been studying those things for a really long time, and I feel like I have, I've done the classes, I've learned, I've educated myself, but when it comes to being a medium, I would not consider myself an expert because it's such an evolving thing. Like sometimes I'll have like different things happen, like my gift will come through dreams, say, for a while, and then I'll start hearing like message. Like I feel like I evolve throughout my gifts. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like they change and upgrade over time, like with the moon phases. Like when I experience a certain powerful full moon, like I feel like my senses are a lot more heightened and there's a lot more synchronicity. But I don't think this is something that you can ever really be an expert in.
Some people don't even get messages, right? They experience something entirely different. I was going to ask about the birth charts because I love birth charts, if that's okay, Erin.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So I had my birth chart done, and I'm a Capricorn, Aquarius.
You are?
Capricorn, yeah.
Hey, when's your birthday? I'm a Capricorn.
January 1st. Year's Day.
Is yours the first two, Erin?
No, mine's January 13th.
Oh, I was going to say, wow, this would be really awesome.
But you explain how okay, the age-old question. It's my favorite question, and I bet that a lot of our listeners have it also. How can one person that was born on January 1st, 1976 at 10:29 a.m. in Payson, Utah.
You were born in Payson?
I was.
So was I.
Oh,
Nice.
You watch, see, this is how it works.
Yeah. And how can you say that they have the exact same personality as somebody born on January 1st, 1976 at 10:49 whatever I said, 10:29 a.m. Now I can't remember. In Phoenix, Arizona, or in Paris, France, or in, how would you respond to that?
I would say they don't.
Yeah. and why? I mean, I know the answer, but
because that's not, I mean, astrology is essentially just a map to get to know yourself on a deeper level. It's not who you are fully as a person, because we're constantly growing, we're constantly changing as human beings. It's not that, I mean, that's what I would say. It's not possible, but that's also why I incorporate the numbers into my practice, because if you go and you compare your number chart with your astrology chart, it can give you an even more detailed account of who you are. Your numerology chart is nothing like anybody else's. There's no, the way it works and the way they map it out is like, it's not there's no way it could possibly be the exact same as anybody else's. And if there is someone that's the exact same, it's probably like a twin flame type of situation.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is I am an identical twin.
Oh, you are?
Yes. And we were born 4 minutes apart. She was born first. But Crystal can attest to how similar our personalities are.
They're like so similar, you can't even tell them apart. Just kidding.
Are you guys identical?
They're water and oil.
Yeah, we are polar opposites in our personalities. And I guess one could argue that 4 minutes made a difference. I mean, because we were
actually, it's it's actually the amount of the letters in your name.
Really? She's Candace and I'm Andrea. What does that mean?
Well, your full name. You both have middle names?
Yes. Oh, mine is huge. I talked to my dad the other day and he said, "Is this my daughter, Andrea Josephine Marziano?" I'm like, "Yep, the one." And I said, I even told him, I said, "That's a whole lot of name, Dad." And my sister is Candace Ann was Marziano and now Bergquist. So
yeah, see, that's where it changes. It goes by, with numerology, it goes by the amount of the letters in your name, how long your name is, and your birthday. So if you think about that, you're not going to find another person with your exact same given name on your birthday on your exact same day. That's why I use the numbers. Because that's how you can actually, with astrology, you can go and have a similar chart than somebody else. There's people probably born at the exact same time as you all over the world. But with numerology, when you incorporate that in, nobody was born at the exact same time as you with your exact same name.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I have a friend. His name is James Thomas Hamilton. He was born on whatever day he was born. I have no idea. And there is a guy named James Thomas Hamilton who was born on the exact same day in a different place. And he's constantly getting mixed up for this other guy who's a criminal. So he fails background checks all the time. And then he has to go and he has to work it out and prove that he's not this other guy.
Well, if they do give him the same social?
I don't know. I don't know. And so that's what I said. I don't remember what his answer was, but
weird.
So it's fascinating because they're not the same people, right? They don't have the same personality.
Yeah.
But they have the same name and the same birth date.
That's wild.
Oh, weird. I see. I guess it is possible.
I guess so.
They were born
but James Thomas Hamilton versus Andrea Josephine Marziano. A little bit of a difference.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But either name is sort of, I don't know, it seemed a little unique, but it's interesting. And I guess, could you explain a little bit more about the numerology? You were talking about the letters and how many there are, but what is it like? Whenever somebody asks me to think of a number, it's usually 47. And is that different? Because I've always kind of thought that was numerology, but I may not have it. I may be thinking of something different altogether.
Okay, so all the different numbers, like they have, if you think of frequency, like each number vibrates at a certain frequency and has a different meaning. Sure. So number 1 is about the self, obviously. So when you're working with the number energy of number 1, you're working on you. Number 2, you're listening to somebody else. You're rather than, choosing your own way, you're taking the advice of another, if that makes sense with the energy of the number 2. Number 3 is mind, body, soul alignment. So that's when number 3 is when you bring your mental into it, your spiritual energy. I'm just trying to explain to you kind of how it works with each individual number. But every single letter in your name has a numerical value. So, let's see, like if you have numbers that are that are high up in the, let's see, like Z's, or that are further along in the alphabet, they're going to have a higher numerical value.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to me that you say that, because my last name has a Z in it. And 47 is always the number I think of. So is that somehow correlated then?
So 47 breaks down to 11.
Right.
11 is a master number. And 11 is obviously the number of balance, co-cooperation, equal give and take. So you could probably, I should do your numerology chart. You might
Yeah,
be a
I'd be
master number
fascinated.
11. And therefore, if you are in a life path 11, so you have your life path number, you have your soul's urge number, you have your heart's desire number, you have your inner dreams number. There's all these different numbers, which is just a frequency that you vibrate on for that sector. So like your life path number, I'm a life path number 9, which is the number of humanitarianism. So I like to help other people with it. Whereas if you were to be a life path 11, that would make you it basically is saying that you've reincarnated many times to where you've mastered all the energies of 1 through 10. And now you're at an 11. So now you teach other people. You're basically an ascended master when you are a life path 11 or a life path 22 or a life path 33.
Is that so? To me, and this may be something also our listeners might be interested in, if that were true, is that one of the reasons why, I mean, not to say that may have come out poorly, but if it is that I'm an 11, is that one of the reasons potentially why teaching is such a passion for me, that
Big
almost
time.
everything I do, I teach?
Yep. Big time. Because
Huh.
you're here to show other people the way. You're here to kind of, set the path through your own experiences.
Which I have
and
copious
show
of.
other people how to
Isn't that
vibrate
interesting?
on a higher frequency. It's numerology is very important to me because it's more different. It's different than astrology. It's a lot deeper.
Mhm.
And I don't know, have you guys ever seen repeating numbers anywhere? Have you ever
All the time. Yeah.
they mean things.
Yeah.
Everything is numbers. Every single thing in the universe is made up of numbers. You can essentially read the numbers that you're seeing and they can tell you a message. Like if you were to call me and say, I keep seeing 333 everywhere, and I could decode that for you and tell you what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah, for a while I was waking up the same time every morning, and it was 3:17 every day for months. And
That's 11 again. That's 11 again.
are you serious? Wow. Okay. Well, that explains that, I guess. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
I used to have Doreen Virtue's original Angel Numbers book, and then she redid it. And sorry if anybody's a huge Doreen Virtue fan, but she redid it, and it's crap now, and I can't find the original. But
she's not the same.
She's not the same.
She's changed a lot, Doreen.
Really? Yeah, I haven't been involved with Doreen Virtue in years and years. I mean, close to a decade and a half, probably. But I really like the original book. Really resonated with me, and the new one just is fluff and crap, in my opinion. Yeah. So, like for example, I see 999 a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, which isn't 3 numbers, but I see that a lot. And those, it was really like, I loved to look up my angel numbers with her old book that I don't have anymore. Now I hate it. Now I don't even bother.
It's crazy. These days you can just download an app.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
But the best part about numerology is like once you learn the basic meanings of just 1 through 10, because they all just have a basic meaning. 8 is obviously infinity. It's infinite. It's also abundance. Once you get the basic meanings of those and you start reading numbers, like you're seeing 999 or 333, and then you break them down to just the one number, like I'm breaking you down to 11 over and over again, like that 999, what would be 9, 18, 24, 5, 6,
27,
so
9, 18, 27. So it's 9 again.
So it's 9 again. Yeah. So you can, if you can break any numbers you're seeing down into just the 1 through 10, then you can get an overall kind of type of message of what's trying to be portrayed to you. And in my opinion, I think that the spirits communicate through numbers. That's always how I've kind of been able to read them. And I was never into math until I got older and got into this.
I think
now
that's
I get it. Now it makes sense to me. I'm like, now I can do math,
Yeah. At least to 11. Well, this is so fascinating. One of the things, I was literally talking to my mom right before we came on, and she's called me basically airy fairy for many years. And I was working at a company that was a very uptight, basically nursing organization, and everybody knew me. And it was interesting because we were talking one day and we were doing one of those sort of break the ice things. And my boss said that she always saw me as an earth mother, which to me was the biggest compliment actually that she could have given me, because I'm like, yeah. And I asked her later, I said, why is that? Because in the ways we were working together, I never felt like I had portrayed that in any way. And she said, it's every single thing about you. And it's interesting because the reason I mention it is because I wonder if either of you ever had feedback like that, especially when, for me, I felt like I hadn't talked about it. I felt like I hadn't done anything weird, but people were still seeing it and feeling it.
Yeah.
I've been told that I'm very good at creating a safe space and a neutral space where like people just don't, except with Cedar Rose, my goodness, my youngest child, but where people just don't feel agitated in the same ways that they normally do, or that they do on a regular basis. So
And
that's
what do you attribute that to though, Crystal? What do you feel that is? Do you have an idea?
I do. I think it's like, for lack of a better word, like my aura. It's really important to me to be that safe space because people often can't find it. And so I want to make sure that anybody who knows me knows they can find it here. Right. And I don't know my childhood, how my feelings were. My mom vacillates, but I don't remember if I wanted to be a mother when I was a child or if I wanted to have a lot of kids when I was a child. But now I very much embrace the mother energy. I'm always the camp mom at E11, for example. I'm the camp mom at the powwow now. All of a sudden, I've been to one powwow. Now I'm the camp mom, right? And so that's, I think that energy also contributes to it.
Yeah. And what about you, Erin? Do you feel like people consider you a certain way, if you will, or what do you find?
I feel like nowadays, if we're keeping up with the times, I have a vibe. I get told that a lot, that I have a certain vibe. But I also, it's always been good. I've never really had an experience where somebody's been like, oh, your vibe is off. But a lot of the times, like, especially when I'm also a dancer, I'm a performance artist. So a lot of the times, like, people will tell me I can feel your vibe through when you come into the room. And I feel safer. I feel more at peace. I also feel like I can, I don't know if you guys resonate with being an empath, but I'll just go to the freaking gas station and whoever's working the counter tells me their whole life story. Why I'm just trying to leave.
And that's the power of the conversation. Because if we were to try to have this conversation, say over text or over Messenger or over Teams or over whatever, the whole thing would go differently. Because we don't have that. You can't get the vibe, right? You can't feel the energy in that non-verbal and visual communication, I think.
Well, and I think the thing you bring up too about they'll tell you your whole life story. Max was talking to me the other day and said, the thing that he's a really strong introvert and I am not, obviously. And but he said you can go out on the street.
We chose the same partners again.
Yeah, no kidding. No
Is
kidding.
this your husband?
He's my partner now. Yeah. Anyway, he said, you can go out on the street, you can see a telephone pole, you can start talking to the telephone pole. You will find out from that telephone pole what area of the country they came, what forest they were grown for, what their parent tree was. what the name of the lumberjack was that chalked them down, and his whole family history by talking to a telephone pole. But I think it's interesting because I think sort of what we've all expressed and had similar kind of feelings to, at least the way I hear it, is that it's that openness. It's that authentic being, because I know people try to be that way, but there's some things that, now, I'm not saying this is good, bad, better than somebody else or anything. It just is what it is. But when people know that it's authentic, when they come up to you, Erin or Crystal, and they don't have the fear they may feel somewhere else because of that authenticity. Do you guys feel that? Does that seem?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Big time. I think too, just being as you guys may know, I feel like us being open individuals who, are willing to share our authentic selves with other people, that energy kind of just bounces off when you get into groups of people, and then other people also feel that coming from you, and then they feel now more comfortable in opening up, being more authentic.
Yeah. And something that's interesting to me too in my life, and I don't know if you guys have felt this, but what I found is people typically, there are some exceptions to this, but people typically who are being inauthentic will not come towards me.
Nope. Me neither.
Because they'll know, in most cases, they know I'll see it. And, but what's interesting is the cases that I didn't know it. And that was, I think, cases that I've been in situations where I didn't know it and the person turned out to be completely not what was expected, was more earth-shattering to me in some ways than anything else I had experienced, because my authentic feelers were broken for whatever reason. And maybe it's part of history, solving the history, releasing myself from the guilt or shame or whatever of having a situation I chose into that was poor.
And how many things, how many thoughts or warning signs or whatever, did you tamp down because of what we were talking about at the beginning, programming, right? I'm not allowed to think this about, I'm not allowed to feel this way about, I'm not, and I think you've gotten out of a lot of that programming just in the recent past, right? Andrea specifically. And it's like, and exactly what you're saying, you just have to say, okay, I learned something from this. It was horrific. I've learned something. I can forgive myself and move on, right?
Yeah.
And learn, look back at what were the signals. What can I want?
And what's interesting, what you just said, is that I specifically have released a lot of stuff. When I was visiting my daughter in Arizona a few weeks ago, she said, "Mom, you're a different person than you were 5 years ago. You're easy to be around. You're fun. I'm not afraid of you anymore." I'm like, afraid of me? And she had literally created a story about how I would respond to things, which, for the record, I never did what she thought I was going to do, but she put it out there,
Just
and
like
so
you're always hitting me all the time.
What?
I literally never hit you.
Right, exactly. And whatever that wall is that they build, it's interesting. She says she doesn't have to feel that way anymore. And she and I actually, a couple of weeks ago, cleared a lot of stuff that she was holding on to that I didn't even know was there. And so that was really cool. And she said, "I feel finally like I can do that for you or with you." And so I think one of the things you talked about earlier, Erin, about being an expert or feeling like you never really can be, is I can never not think of an onion when I think of growth. And because somebody came up to me one time in one of my mentoring classes and said, "I feel like I've dealt with this before." And I said, "I get that." And we all, I think, get to places where we feel like we've dealt with it before, but our psyche could deal with a certain level of whatever it was. And then we recover, and then we do our things, and then our psyche is ready for a little bit more and a little bit more. And I feel like that's true in healing and recovery, as well as it is for these gifts that the universe, source, whatever it is, knows that now we're ready for the next step. Now we can do that further ascension. We can increase our vibration. We can do the things that we weren't capable of or even had the bandwidth for prior to this moment in time.
Right.
I also think that a lot of what I do personally as a medium is and I've had this experience with the last few people that I've worked with on a personal level, to where I'll go and I'll connect for them to their lost loved ones. And then they come back to me later saying, I'm able to connect on my own. And so I honestly think that I kind of like the domino effect. A lot of the times when I do connect with people and through these weird circumstances or synchronicities, it's because they have the gift themselves, and I just activate that and open that up with that within them and show them that they too can use it, and then send them on their journey,
And is it possible too, what came to me when you were saying that is that you take maybe some of the fear out of it for them, because you show them that this is a safe, comfortable, happy journey, or even if it's not happy per se, it's something that a person can get through, learn, develop, and things like that. And so maybe at that point, then they feel like they can actually open their own door.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, people's ancestors that are on the other side are hilarious.
Yeah.
We'll be doing these readings, and these people are just hilarious, making me laugh, or like I'll channel something that is like funny that the person remembers from them, and they're like, everyone just, and it's almost like this release of fear. It's incredible to experience, because you watch someone go from being totally scared and thinking that they're working with Satan or doing something bad to just this peacefulness. And honestly, humor is what brings that in. And the other side, they all got a sense of humor.
Yeah, I had an experience that, like I said, when I was living in Utah, my practice had developed to the point that people would come to me specifically for looking for some sort of communication. And one time a friend of mine who I knew really well came in, and he had brought his own crystals. He said, is it okay if I place the crystals in the room? I said, sure, because I use them too, but he wanted his own. I said, that's perfect, whatever you like. Well, I started with him lying down on his stomach. And all of a sudden, this little lady, always the little poodle hair lady, was in a bright red dress, and she was dancing all around. And she said, I want you to do something for me. And by then I had heard these messages enough time. I'm like, sure, what? I mean, before it was like, what do you want? But then it's like,
I knew
okay.
what that was like, seeing an old lady.
I know, that is so fascinating. We need to do a whole series on that, Crystal.
Yeah, we do.
Crystal has no mind's eye. She has no picture.
No mind's eye, no inner voice. I can't imagine smelling things or tasting things. I'm mind
Isn't that
blind.
wild?
Wait, what?
Well, let's back up for just a moment. Okay. I will finish my story. Okay. And then I think that what you're going to explain too, Crystal, is really good for our listeners as well, because it comes from a different type of perspective, how you can use your gifts in a whole different way. Well, anyway, she said to me, I want you to kiss him on the right shoulder blade. I'm like, what now? You want me to do what? And he was a good friend of mine. And so I don't know that I would have gotten this sort of message from someone about someone I didn't know, because that would have been kind of weird and awkward. Yeah. But I said, all right. I said, Mike, you told me to give you any message I get. So here it is. I have something I've been asked to do. And I leaned over, because like I said, he was lying on the massage table on his stomach. And so I leaned over and I kissed him on the right shoulder blade. He was fully dressed as well, which is neither here nor there really, but he was. And he started laughing. And I said, what? Because I didn't know what it meant. I mean, it was just, that's what I was asked to do. And he said, I know where that came from. And I said, who? And he said, is it this grandma in a red dress? And I said, yes. And it was his grandmother, because he's tall and his grandmother was very short. And whenever he would come over, she would reach up to him and kiss him on the right shoulder blade. That was what they did. Cute. And so he knew that she was there. And I said, she is dancing like crazy. And this red dress is just so red. And he said that they, against what some people wanted, they buried her in that dress because it was her very favorite dress. Mm-hmm. And they just wanted it with her, even though obviously for them, they knew that she wasn't like going to wear it in the regular way. But then the fact that she showed up in that dress meant so much to him. So it was really interesting. That whole session was fascinating, but that's another whole podcast. So, so Crystal, this is something, as we talk about the things that we hear, see, feel, whatever, I know this is hard for you because you have what is called
aphantasia. And it means that I don't, I realize I just said when I imagine things, but I don't, like, spirits don't come to me. I don't see them. If you say to me, imagine an apple. I know I'm imagining an apple, but I don't actually physically or mentally see an apple. I have no mind's eye. If you tell me to imagine, I hear horses galloping in the distance. I don't actually hear horses galloping in the distance. I just know what you're talking about, and I'm imagining horsefoot, whatever in the distance. If you say, imagine you're biting into a lemon. I can't imagine biting into a lemon. I know what biting into a lemon tastes like, and I can describe it to you, but I can't actually imagine it on my actual lips.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't have an inner voice. I have an inner voice in the sense of I say things to myself in my brain, but there's no voice.
And Erin, when she talked about the lemon, did you taste the lemon? I know I did.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden
that's how I could picture that whole thing.
Yeah, and my mouth started to water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating to me because it's so different. And this is one of the things that I tell people who say, well, I wish I could do this. I wish I could see that. But I feel like each one of us has a different gift that manifests in different ways. Now, Crystal, you may not see those, feel those, hear those things, but clearly, to me, it's almost more of a big gift because you can do all of what you do without the cues that we get. And so in a way, I think that's even more amazing that you can then still, because that to me is a bigger sort of spiritual gift.
You got it good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Erin said it way better than I did. You got it good, man. And so it's interesting. And a lot of people feel bad when they don't. My son will see colors, but he doesn't have any translation to what that means. He just knows he sees colors. Mm-hmm. And that's all. And that's fine. And maybe it's part of his onion that he hasn't been able to unwrap. But
that's I don't actually see auras, right?
Uh-huh.
But I can tell you that your auras are definitely pink and blue. Mm-hmm. But I don't see it.
Right. But you know it. And that's what's really interesting. So I think it would be a really interesting podcast and really interesting topic if we have our listeners write in and say if they experience it this way or how they experience their various gifts. And where would they write, Crystal?
They would write to mysticdetectives@gmail.com.
Awesome. So we really invite you to do that and give us some stories that you have and maybe some thoughts that bring you into what you might feel is your mystic space.
Yeah.
One other question, Erin. We talked a little bit about this, maybe that when you were young, you may have had these gifts, but maybe, I don't know. I'll just ask the question because I'm not setting it up very well. But did you ever experience any blocks or slowing in the growth of your development with your mystic gifts or your mediumship?
Yes. And it was particularly when I was not taking the best care of myself, partying too much, doing crap drinking, smoking, all those things. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I went through a phase in my life where I was just a party animal. And that's when I definitely noticed a decline because I think it's pretty straightforward. My mind wasn't clear. I was clouded with all sorts of stuff. And, and I was actually declining giving people readings because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to give them something that would help them. Mm-hmm. And I won't give somebody a reading. I actually will not provide service if I am not in the right space mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because I know I'm not going to be giving information that is going to either be clear or accurate.
That's interesting. And so you've shifted your life so that you can be clear more often. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of it has to do, I think for me personally, a lot of it has to do with what you're taking in. You are who you hang out with. You are what you eat, that type of thing. It's true. Yeah. Like if you're constantly clouding your mind and your brain and your body with toxins, then you can't have a clear view of what's really going on around you or on your inside. So definitely, I think that to be able to really get in touch with this part of yourself, and I think it probably goes for everybody, you got to be healthy. You got to be healthy mind, body, and soul. You got to take care of yourself and not be putting substances that cloud your judgment inside of your body.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because some people will have a very different perspective on that. People who do things like take peyote or mushrooms or whatever because they feel like that transcends them. And it's interesting. We haven't talked with anyone on the podcast yet about something like that, but it's something I'd be interested to see what their perspective is, because I actually tend to believe what you do, Erin, is that for me at least, the clearer I am, the better. Now, there's been times that people have come for a session and I've been able to take my stuff, put it up on the shelf and just clear, pray, center, and just be able to do something for them. But if I were completely honest with myself, it probably wasn't as good as it would have been. And no one's ever complained or anything like that. Like, whoa, you were just messed up, man. But I looking back, were I completely honest, it would have probably been better for everyone if I had stepped back at that moment instead. Although I did check with myself just to say, well, do I feel like I can do this? And I did. Was it honest or not? I don't really know. But I think your point is very true. And so I think that's fascinating.
Most important question of the podcast: what's your favorite deck?
What's my favorite deck? The regular playing cards.
Really?
I love my, well, I actually have okay, scratch that. I've got a set of, let me grab it. Just let me show you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I do. And I have several sets myself. And I usually, if I'm going to use them in a session, I'll bring 3 or 4 out and I'll ask my participant to choose something.
Yeah, that's what Holly used to do.
Yeah. And I had somebody come for a mentoring session, and I normally, what is that?
Oh, this is the Mother Piece Round, and it's an antique deck. It was made in the 70s. My friend gave it to me as a gift. It was her mom's. But look at the illustrations on these.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool.
Amazing.
So you actually read them how they fall. So if they fall like tilted,
Right,
they mean something. If they fall upside down, obviously. These also incorporate, that's the tower card. Lovely. These also incorporate the numbers too. And they're like, it's a earth sign deck. So this is obviously a pentacle.
That's awesome.
Love these cards. Amazing.
That's super cool. Well, one of the things I was just going to say is that I don't always bring my cards into a mentoring session, but before she came, I felt really strongly that I got to. And I brought 4 different decks that I just happened to grab randomly, which we all probably agree it wasn't totally random, but anyway, I grabbed them. And I said, I didn't even know if she used cards or would be okay with it, but I said, if you're open to it, I feel like we get to use some of these cards. So will you pick one of the decks that you'd like to use, or I can choose one? And she picked one, and it was, I mean, sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm shocked at how on track these things are. I mean, I know I believe it. I know it works, but sometimes I'm just going, what? Yeah. And that was one of those moments that I just was shocked that, I mean, I don't know if saying it was true is the word I'm looking for, but it was so on track for her that I know for me, it meant there was really no way other than spirit, universe, guides, that it could possibly be anything other than something that works. And so I think, to me, that every once in a while, I don't necessarily doubt what I know, but sometimes, like I say, it just surprises me when it's so strongly confirmed.
I agree.
Oh, it's very, I mean, I believe in, I actually have studied the cards, and they originated through images that were actually carved into stones. And nowadays, licensed therapists are using the tarot cards in session because it's the images. The images create a certain psychological response,
right,
and open up the mind, and can be a strong form of therapy. Like I think it's therapy. That's just mine.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Wow. Well, this has been awesome, Erin. I really appreciate meeting with you. And Crystal, I always love talking with you. So anyway, is there anything else you'd like to follow up with, Erin, or do you feel like you're complete?
I think that this has been wonderful, and I really appreciate you two taking the time to do this with me. And I think that this has been a great conversation. I mean, it's been awesome.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Great.
All right. Well,
Mystic Detectives.
Yay.
Detectives.
And we have some awesome guests coming up, so stay tuned. Listeners, bring in your ideas, send them to us. And we invite you to stay curious
and keep exploring.